All right, so welcome into the live stream today. We're going to be diving into the ETH merge, or maybe not so merge. Take a look at what is going to benefit from the ETH slowdown and how you might be able to play into this. So this is going to be a strategy episode. I think that'll help you guys break out where these layer ones are, what they might look like, who are some of the winners, who are some of the losers in this place. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to TechPath. Let's jump into, of course, the story today, which I guess over this week, the big idea is that ETH has really had a June window for the potential of really getting this merge underway. And I think the scenario is, in a lot of people, the question I have is whether or not ETH was already built in terms of the pricing action that we've seen. It's been hanging still with Bitcoin very similarly, necessarily not stride for stride, but definitely has and is in the same hemisphere in terms of how ETH has been responding on the marketplace. So whether or not this is really going to impact it long term, I think is still questionable. The question I have is, are there some players that could sweep in and maybe get some action here in terms of short-term investment opportunities? So we'll take a look at that. We'll dive into some sentiment today and kind of run down through each one of these. But the Ethereum merge a few months after June, the dev clears up what's going on. This is, again, goes back to my point of, and I don't understand how and why we're seeing content coming out of, even though I understand this is decentralized, but lead devs are, I feel like, to a certain extent, can in some cases damage the overall understanding, because a lot of times they're thinking 4 and 5 chess moves out and ahead. And if you look at how they respond to things like that, they're way out above and ahead of everyone in the marketplace, and in many cases, way out in front of the analyst even. So for them to do something like this and go out and talk about the merge and the slowdowns and all these things, they don't really go down and line it out. He actually ended up doing this to kind of help explain a little better. So I do think they kind of cleaned it up. But long-term awaited merge set for another delay. Developers working on the upgrade, estimating completion time few months after. Don't know what a few months means, but that could be 2 months, 3 months, 8 months. Some people now pointing into 2023. So it's not necessarily a fixed time. And again, we still don't know, because of the way that they're testing the merge, how this may roll out toward the end of the year. So owing the 6 of testing, there was a general expectation that the merge would go through the mid-year. However, latest setback is unsurprising given that the proof of stake has constantly been delayed ever since it was first proposed. And this is something that we've seen over and over. Tim Byko provided the update timeline via Twitter yesterday, tentatively stating that the core devs are into the final stretch. It won't be June, but likely in a few months later. No firm date, but we're definitely in the final chapter of proof of work on it, on Ethereum. And I think this is fine. You know, I don't necessarily see this as a negative sign for Ethereum. I still think this, in fact, I kind of look at this as an opportunity because of timing-wise. Right now, what we're seeing in a little bit of a downward trend in the sentiment side of the overall market. So I don't anticipate we're going to see massive pumps. Sure, we're going to see some little fake pumps in and out throughout this next sector before we start to see some of the additional Fed data. I still believe Fed data and inflation are going to be the guiding measurements that really kind of cornerstone what is happening in the crypto market. And of course, Ethereum, because it's pegging so closely to Bitcoin, I think will also be in that pace. So if you are looking, for me, anything under that 3,000 mark is really kind of the window for me. If ETH does fall into those zones, it's an opportunity for me to grab a little bit more and just take a look at dollar cost averaging. So that in its short, okay, a good time to continue on. But are there and is there additional opportunities to take this to the next level? And we'll break those down a little bit further. This is just kind of an additional statement right here where the dev is basically saying, hey, listen, don't look at investing in any ETH mining rigs, which I think, again, is back to the whole point of this could be shorter term than longer term. So I like that. He did break it down in this tweet right here with the merge timelines, which I thought this came out kind of after to clean up a little bit of the miscommunication, maybe confusion in the market. But there's no official date. We know that. They're trying to thoroughly test and get bug-free on this. Any date announcement will be communicated, obviously, on the blog. This is the interesting point, is on what needs to happen. As of April 2022, client have been in process implementations for the merge. And they're using the shadow forks. And I've seen this in development before many times where you'll build out various test nets and an attempt to break it. And this is what they're trying to do, is to essentially try to build through the proof of work overall protocol and look at how that merge is going to take place. And going through these shadow forks, which run against both the existing test nets and the Ethereum mainnet, these have revealed implementation issues in clients. So this is obviously uncovering bugs or uncovering some issues, whether it's congestion, whether we're seeing any time of exploit potential, environments. Those kind of things are, and that is a good thing, I think, for the devs to really line that out. But this is probably what should have been put out in the first place, is going this direction as opposed, hey, we're just delayed. So I think once clients work with issues during shadow forks, the existing test nets, this is Ropstein and Gorley, will be run thoroughly through the merge, and then the announcement will be made on the blog again. So I'm feeling still very, very bullish on ETH, and I do look at ETH in conjunction as an overall situation of being a really good opportunity long term. And that really is the end of the day. That's what you're really kind of trying to make a decision on. The other thing that I look at is, what are the big guys doing? And because when you think about just what's happening in crypto, often you follow the whales. The other ones I follow are the big investors. This is Chris Dixon. He thinks Web3 is the future of the internet. Is it? Big question. And I think with what Chris talks about a lot is that, and he's leading the investing at Silicon Valley, Andreessen Horowitz, which is, or A16Z, which is kind of their blockchain version. But he's really talking about kind of the evolution of where Web3 is going. And that to me is more so bullish for ETH and also for Solana, AVAX, and a handful of others, including Polkadot, and then even some of the layer 2s, all those kind of projects that really have this kind of direction around NFTs and where the growth of that is going to be. So I like the fact that we're seeing more investment opportunities out there from guys like Chris Dixon and others around Andreessen, A16Z, Capital, really leaning into where NFTs are going. So I'm still very bullish on where all of the Web3 focus is going. And I think if you think about Elon, just in the sense of what he's been looking at over the day of trying to buy Twitter, is that for me, that really leans into where Web3 could be, because crypto and its integration into Twitter, and also where Web3 is going in terms of just overall ecosystems within what would be the next internet. All of that is playing in very early stage right now. So who are some of the early stage companies that you would say, okay, these are the ones I'd be watching for? So this was a tweet by TechMetrics, and this one to me is kind of reveals it, because it showcases the things you have to be able to leverage past a technological barrier, and that is Web3, what we're dealing with right now. You've got Near Protocol and Solana both in 4x on in the terms of the number of developers that they're bringing on board. And then if you can kind of see down here a little bit, you've got Avalanche, Polygon, Kusama, obviously Binance Smart Chain. Then you got things like Celo even in there, Cardano, and then even Cosmos out here. But you can kind of see this range right here, not so much. This is a 2x. People losing. This is things like, Filecoin, etc. But if you look at the big ones, Near Protocol, Solana, Polygon, Avalanche, those are the ones, and obviously with Kusama meaning Polkadot and kind of that whole ecosystem. So this is the thing that you have to watch for, who is going to be at the races when all of this occurs. And that's why I think Solana is probably going to be one of the big ones that really wins out, both on the gas side of it, but also on the developer side, if they can get past, as you know, their problems with exploits and hacks. So, and that I think is just going to come with good devs. So this is another story right here with Rich Dad Poor Dad. This is Robert Kiyosaki. If you haven't, I'm sure most of you guys have probably listened and or heard and or maybe even read this book, but it's a really good example of how to prepare for inflation. And some of the things that he's pointing to is always being early on any of these. So if you got in early on, the $6,000 Bitcoin, look where you're standing now. Same kind of thing here is when you look at the overall US dollar inflation. The one-time best-selling author claims that a large portion of Americans don't even have $1,000 in their bank account. They're going to get wrecked basically when we see the real inflation numbers coming out. And I saw some of the most recent inflation numbers here just today. And we're talking about a 25% inflation when you factor in food and energy. That is unbelievable. And that right there is an opportunity of whether or not you can start to reposition your dollars into something that is early stage enough to be able to jump out in front. And there's a handful of tokens that are in that protocol area. And one, of course, is Solana. The other one I liked, which was also kind of pointing in that direction, was Near Protocol, which we've invested in here. Avalanche, the other one I like, and then obviously Polkadot. And I'll break down a couple of these here, but if you look at of what it's going to be, inflation goes up. The average American doesn't have $1,000. 40% of Americans don't have $1,000. So when inflation goes up, we're going to see a wipeout of 50% of the population, and that's when a revolution starts. That's the one thing that I'm a little bit more concerned around. That is where we could see some pretty dire issues. So being able to be in the right spots at the right time, and I think crypto is going to be one of the safe havens for a lot of this future because it's not necessarily slowing down. So big ones for sure. Make sure and put your questions in over on the chat. We'll try to get to as many as we can. I want to jump over here to Avalanche, of course, why I think they continue to really just kind of overshine a lot of these projects. And this goes back to the point I'm talking about is you need developers, you need money to be able to roll out the projects, get the dApp development going. Avalanche reported hitting the $5.25 billion valuation. This is with a new raise that they've hit. This is a $350 million funding round, which to me is huge because when you look, and we've had the guys on with Avalanche a couple of times here on the show, and to me, this is kind of their big push into converting Web 2 into Web 3. And as you saw there on that chart earlier of the developers, it's harder and harder for people, these projects, to get quality developers. They're going to have to leverage into Web 2. And I talk about this all the time. Who is the company, who's the project that has the best capability of leveraging up to Web 3 from the tech stack inside Web 2? And a lot of those key developers that have built the internet as you and I know it, Avalanche leads the way in terms of that area. Here's another area that Avalanche is pushing in on, and that is on decentralized data storage. Again, another reason that what will be Web 3 and what we'll see in terms of how data is essentially stored and how the whole community of Web 3 is going to be operated on within the evolution of what will be the next internet, you're going to need the Amazon Web Services, the AWSs of the world. That would be projects like Arweave. And Arweave and their partnership here on decentralized storage is a pretty big deal. And what he says right here, scalable smart contracting systems, very pivotal in the next stage of Web 3. This is Sam Williams, the founder and CEO of Arweave. This is why they have, of course, partnered up with Avalanche. Developers can now use Arweave's permanent storage solution as if it were natively available on Avalanche. So this is going to enable entirely a new class of Web3 apps. And this gets back into the whole point. dApps being developed, Web 2 apps and Web 2 developers converting over and then being able to leverage the data capacities and the data needs inside Web 3. You put those two together and you got some magic that starts to happen. So all this kind of tuning in to where kind of technology is going, but more importantly, how these investments are going forward. And right now, you know, cash is trash. In my opinion, you've got a situation where you've got an opportunity to leverage in at what are some of the lower points of the market. And I think we're going to see a few more little dips and opportunities. And I think that's going to be the big capability of really making kind of the next layer of wealth building in the US and really abroad across the world. I think we'll see so much more of this. Before we get into the last token and really kind of some of the other points I want to hit to and some of the data on sentiment, I want to thank our sponsors, iTrust Capital. Of course, if you guys are looking at long-term, and I think you are if you're watching our channel, you see this more as a big play for a long-term approach toward investing. And that's really what you should be doing. Crypto IRAs are one of the best ways to do it. And I like iTrust Capital just because of their scenario around one, I think one of the leading crypto IRAs out there. It's very easy to use, low trade values. I mean, you're talking about 0.5% here. The other thing I like about what they're doing is their ability to really kind of bring in the security and institutional grade crypto custody, which I love with Fireblocks and Coinbase, so it just makes it safer. And then of course the bigger thing is, hey, can I buy the assets I want to buy? And if you look at just what they're doing right now, let me just show you all their assets, because there's a bunch here available. And they keep adding. So you've got Axion there now, Decentraland, even Shiba, Maker, Avalanche, of course, which we're talking about, Ethereum, Chainlink, so all the critical ones. And it's only going to get deeper and deeper for what would be somewhat of an exchange style approach. Obviously, they're using Coinbase to handle their transaction, their arbitrage, but that's the whole point, is that you've got an opportunity here to get to a lot of these projects long-term in your IRA. And that, of course, can be tax advantages for you, long-term wealth building, all those kind of things. So make sure and check them out. You get $100 on the funding reward just by the link, using the link below. So make sure and use that. All right, let's get into this topic right here. And this is where it gets a little bit, because, it's not all, roses for Avalanche. And I think a lot of you guys already know this. This is Mark Jeffrey talking about the Ethereum merge delayed till fall, possibly. Now Avalanche, Phantom have a real shot at stealing the crown. Solana was down for 8 hours yet again, so fading fast. Now here's the thing that I always say with Solana, and I've talked about this many times before, is that when you have early stage projects like Solana, and they still are early stage, you're going to be in that process. And that's why they're hiring so many developers, is they are early stage. They're trying to fix a lot of these scenarios and get past the pain of what they're dealing with when early stage startups are done. This is no different than what we saw in Silicon Valley in the mid 2000s. It's no different than what you see in Silicon Valley today on any real tech startup that is out there today. They're still dealing with the same kind of scenario. So I don't necessarily lead a lot into that, but I do put that on the desk in terms of when I'm considering investments. I want to make sure that I'm going in the direction that is, one, secure, and two, is that they're showing grounds for improvement. And I think that's the key you got to watch with Solana, is if they're showing improvement and they continue to address these things, no problem, for sure. Another one is Terra's Anchor protocol launching on Polkadot, their DeFi hub, Akala. The tie-in with Polkadot, this is the connection I think that we're trying to say here, is with Terra and the Anchor protocol, the tie-in with Polkadot. I think these are some of the things that really start to bring and coalesce some of these projects together that are really worth it. And Polkadot is one of those projects that is, one, being a layer zero, that really has an opportunity. And I continue to see the development. If you look at Kusama, if you look at some of the projects that we've seen within the parachain auctions, these are all going in the right direction. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And again, we'll probably see Polkadot benefit from what is going to happen around the ETH, whether it's an ETH slowdown or we just don't see the leap when the timing comes where Bitcoin does make a run. And I do think we're going to see a run from Bitcoin. So I just don't think we'll see the ETH breakaway until we see the merge. And here's Guy talking about it. Terra intent on taking over. The last move is the integration of the Anchor protocol on Polkadot and Kusama. This could lead to further adoption of UST in the ecosystem. So again, good bedfellows here, I think, with Terra, UST, and where Polkadot and Kusama and this whole ecosystem are starting to flow. You tie in Anchor protocol for yields. Now you've got some things that are really leaning in to what we're talking about, is investing long-term in some of these key projects. So if you're new to crypto, maybe we may be flying too fast, and I understand that. What I would do is try to grab some of the names and the projects that we're talking about in this this video, go back through our channel and start to learn a little bit about parachains. That's very important if you want to understand Polkadot. We have a ton of videos on that. Just search parachains and Polkadot on our channel. You'll find a ton. And then dig back into our ETH videos, dig back into our Solana videos and our Avalanche interviews with John Wu. You do that, and you will give yourself a nice little research tool to really build around whether or not one of these is right for you. If you're new to crypto, if you're not new to crypto and you're one of our traditional viewers or listeners, you kind of know what we're talking about, and you're starting to analyze quite a bit differently. So all that is cool, and we love to do that. But remember, these are market movers. The market mover concept that we have here on the show is pretty simple. We're going to bring you a lot of data, give you a lot of insights, but the main thing is it's not investment advice. It's really giving you guys the tool sets, hopefully, that can lead you into the next level for your own profitability. Here's another just, further, contribution to this. And this is Tether's stablecoin enters the Polkadot ecosystem. There were some couple of things on here that I wanted to feature, and it was this one right here. All right, so USDT, this is going to have an asset tag that allows Polkadot, let me zoom up on that, Polkadot and Kusama's rule operating relay chains to recognize the tokens, this is important, tokens other than the respective native cryptocurrencies of DOT and KSM. So this is where and I know this is complicated and it gets a little bit confusing. The main thing is this creates an interoperability between a lot of these chains. So if you think about how banks work, banks, stores of value start to have to talk to each other. That's kind of what's happening in a lot of Web3 and DeFi is these interoperabilities capabilities, and that is something that is going to lead in a lot of these projects in the right direction in terms of, one, value of those tokens, and two, the ability in which those tokens can start to do real world tools, real world things. And that's everything from bank congestion, where we see a lot of potential bank traffic activities coming on the opportunity of investment, and also how crypto is going to be making its way in traditional finance. That's the other thing I think we're going to start seeing a little bit more of as we start to see a lot of the pressures of regulatory guidelines kind of hit the market. So a lot happening there. Another one I wanted to hit on was this right here. Polkadot, just kind of talking about it. We did it. Unique has officially won the 14th Polkadot. Another Polkadot parachain. This is I Am Unique. Again, more of these Polkadot projects, I think, really kind of continue in with being pretty amazing because there's just so much innovation for sure. So I want to get to a poll before we jump over to where we're kind of trending here. All right, which one of these tokens would make the best ETH hedge? Everybody kind of leaning in on Solana, Avalanche, and Polkadot, kind of neck and neck there at 23 and 22. So that's good. I like that. I'm kind of curious what the other 13% was. But Solana, of course, that would be my pick as well. I do like Avalanche. Polkadot is a long-term play for me. Avalanche is one of those that I trade in and out of, and it's a great one that I think as they start to roll out. Now it's probably going to get a little bit different with Avalanche just because of the investment level. They're going to move a little bit more lumbering, I feel like, in the future. Solana, I feel like, still has some pretty good jets under them and potentially has some really great opportunities. And again, remember, Solana's tie into OpenSea, the NFT connection, all those things moving in the right direction. Lastly is I just want to jump over to the overall sentiment for the week. And again, this is something that we've been watching. This is our CPI. This is what we look at. This came out on Monday, and it gives you basically directions of where market trends are going. So you can kind of see there on altcoins, market trends were a little bit down. Same thing here on overall, showing a little bit of a dip this last week, which is what we anticipated. And that's what's kind of showing Bitcoin right there, also in its dip phase. And then I want to jump over to some of the top cryptos and give you guys a look at Solana, because Solana has had a pretty good run. Let me zoom up on that for you guys. They had this pretty good run right here, which was really that big push. And then they kind of went flat a little bit, and then we saw a little bit of adjustment here. But again, when I'm reading these sentiment and amplification numbers, when I don't see traditional big drops like what I see right here and right here, this usually tells me that we've got some opportunity in that token for a little bit of movement if I'm aligning it with what's happening over on TradingView. One of the things that I do, and I'm going to put out a video for you guys on this, is how I read the sentiment data on the CPI. Is there's two tools I use that basically I map these on, and all of you can probably are using those right now, and that is TradingView. I use it with Market Cipher. Market Cipher mainly to look at the money flow, but more importantly, just to look at the 4-hour, because that gives me a little bit better matchup. And I'll lay in the sentiment data that I'm looking at right here. So if you go back historical, just pick your date, lay in your sentiment data on those on TradingView, and then if you don't like TradingView, use CoinMarketCap and just take some screenshots and overlay those on dates. That usually gives me an idea as to which way the market is leaning. That's not always 100% right, for sure, otherwise we'd be charging a ton for this. But it definitely is and gives us some signs, and in many cases what we've been able to do is start to predict these uptrends or the downtrends. So right now we're in a downtrend, somewhat predicted over the last 10 days, and that is what we're looking at right now for Solana. Now this could change quickly on many of these, and hopefully when we get to going to daily, right now we're on Mondays and Fridays, we may drop a Wednesday update on CPI, and hopefully the future is a daily update on these. And when we get to that level of data ingestion, I think that's when we can really tune in hard on the CPI and get daily updates. So listen, if you guys are tuned in on our podcast, the number one thing is to jump in over here to this show. You can catch us on YouTube. And of course, you can also participate in our live stream questions, because that's the thing you don't get to do on the podcast. So make sure and jump in on that. And for those of you who are watching on the live stream today or maybe afterwards, don't forget we have a show called Metaverse Insider. We dive into games, NFT, really dive into the metaverse, and it's also in a podcast format. So depending on if you've got time on the video, you can watch it. If you don't, you can get it on the podcast. So let's jump into some of the questions. Chainlink on Mila. Chainlink is a hedge. You know, this is one that we just put Chainlink on the short list to include into the CPI. So we're going to start, when we track these, it's just a matter of ingesting the data over historical. So Chainlink is coming. Moonriver, viable option. I'm invested in Moonriver. I like that one, and it's obviously it's a parachain winner for Polkadot. So I'm definitely into that one. Solana has 50% smart money. I would say yes. Remember that Solana is backed by a lot of billionaires, and it is there's a lot. Look at the tokenomics, and I know my friend over James at Invest Answers, he loves this token Solana, and he and I kind of go back and forth on this. I like the project. I like kind of the numbers behind it. The problem I have with it is, again, still some of the challenges they face with security and the ability to get these exploits resolved. So, because that in the future I think is going to be really important. Sven, thoughts on STEPN? So interesting you mentioned that one. We tagged that one in one of our metaverse shows early on, and I bought that token. It skyrocketed, and we use our CPI data on those kind of metaverse plays like that. It skyrocketed, and I exited the token. But it was one that I saw a short-term bump on. But it's interesting because it's going after that, that athletic side of, crypto. When I say athletic, I mean we haven't seen many tokens or projects really go after that Peloton feel for blockchain, and STEPN is kind of that. So it's a move to earn type project. So I like it long term, probably a good bet. Frank, is BTC going down? Right now we're still seeing downward trends. We'll probably see some pumps in and out, but I don't think we are going to see, based on the data we're seeing in sentiment. We're dropping another sentiment data pull in the morning on Friday. That'll help us through the weekends to get it. And if it slows down, it might mean that we have a pump over the weekend. So I'm watching the CPI really closely on that. We will drop a video on that tomorrow for you guys. Ivan, how long will the merge be delayed? Yeah, this is the problem. Well, the excuse was in the video because they're basically talking about that they are using these shadow forks of the merge and of what they're trying to do in the Ethereum, basically the blockchain. And the issue is that they found some bugs, so they're slowing the rollout. This is a typical thing that you see in any software development. So it is what it is. Luna long-term hedge. Yeah, I listen to Luna, Doquan, Bitcoin, backing up UST. You've got the Avalanche, the Anchor protocol in there. And I just think overall their strategies are very solid. I like Luna long-term, and I definitely like UST, Anchor protocol price prediction. Anchor is going to continue, but listen, with the issue of things like Celsius, Nexo, Voyager, BlockFi, all of the companies that most likely are going to get hit on these yields for USDC and traditional blue chips, I think we're going to start to see some movement more into these more stable-esque DeFi projects. And I think Anchor is going to be one of them, even though it's not sustainable to maintain that for long term. It will be a pass-through point where Anchor is going to win big for a short period of time. And then we'll see how it goes. But I think a lot of people are looking at moving, including me, and we probably should do a video on that. Our strategies for moving away from what was these nice little yields, which were anywhere between 3 and 9%, depending on which platform you were on, with USDC down to Bitcoin and Ethereum. But I think now a lot of that is going to start moving into some DeFi projects to help create those yields back. There are a couple of projects out there, though, that I have a feeling can skirt around these regulations and may end up on one. We've got a couple that we're watching. We will do a video on them coming up. So, because there are some things that are starting to brew in the market right now, just because of what we're starting to see. Dan, will Illuvium be a top game through 2025? Illuvium's got a release. They are dropping something this month. We just had Kieran Warwick on the show, Metaverse Insider. Check out that interview. Watch that interview and listen to what Kieran says, because he drops some very interesting little nuggets, and he also gives you a little bit of insights as to where Illuvium is going. Crypt tips. Are you still on a Red Fox? Yes, I invested in Red Fox just this week. We had Benny on, Ben Fairbanks on just this week. I think the video just went out. So check that one, because he's talking about their metaverse play, and they're actually going to, well, they say they're going to roll one out on the 27th. If they actually roll it out and it's usable for their alpha members, I think 300 people is what they're talking about right now. And if that happens, I'm hoping we can get in on that alpha. If we can, we'll try to, I don't know if they're going to allow us to publish anything on it, but if they do, then, and we see something there we like, I'm looking at RFox as being a very, very solid metaverse play. Thoughts on HBAR? Great project. I still am a big fan of Hedera and what they're doing. Just when you look at their ecosystem, but more importantly, their partnerships, that is really the power of where HBAR is going. Watch some of our videos on HBAR with Mance Harmon, their CEO. He really gets into a lot of that and kind of shows the format, the floor, kind of the forecast, and also the roadmap of what HBAR is trying to do. So lots happening there. Man, you guys are throwing questions fast. When should you be ready to buy Sol and Dot? All right, so if Solana dips under 100, I'm buying. If we get Solana in and out of 100, I'll probably continue to do some dollar cost averaging. Could it hit 80? Yeah, we could see it come back down to 80 in another correction. That's another good spot. But where is it going to go? Sure, this is the one of those. Remember, Solana, all-time high was insane. That was what, 240, I think, was the number. So big opportunities there on the upside. Adam, so I like Cosmos. I'm a little bit cautious on Cosmos right now. There are some things I would do some research around that project right now. There are a little bit of a slowdown. Didn't have Phantom up here. We've done a lot on Phantom, and we are a big proponent of Phantom. I like that project. I own that token, and it is one of my long-term altcoin tokens. When I say long-term, meaning during a bull run, that's one of the tokens that I will run up with. All right, man, that's a bunch. Geez, you guys are coming at them crazy. All right, if you have some ideas for maybe have an interview or maybe a project that you want us to do a deep dive and analysis on, just drop it in the comments below if you're after the live stream, or even now. We'll take those. And again, remember, the best thing to do is jump in on the Diamond Circle. The Diamond Circle is free. You get 2 emails a week, and we are dropping in not only AMAs, which don't make it on the show. We are dropping in how-tos, guides, different kind of things, and then you get a line list of all of our most recent content. So it's free. It comes out twice a week. It's an email. It's to you, and a lot of people love it because maybe you don't have time to check back the YouTube often. Then you can kind of scour through the videos and pick the ones you like to watch. Pop, and in you go. That's the best thing to do. And of course, if you guys want to reach me, it's out on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.